free. And then what happens in Nigeria? At any point in time, once there's a new distributor platform, they choke it. If I tell you the number of calls I get, Mad, I beg, you know this Netflix people, I want to see this Netflix people. You never sat down, like Steve said, to understand what Netflix wants. If they had their way that, they would have strangled that one too. If you say streaming, everybody goes there. If you say everybody goes there. And yet, which is part of the larger Nigerian problem, I always ask people, I said, at what point did Nigerians become so lazy? It's in every aspect of our life. We run away from even the one that has any smallest challenge. We go, so that's why we have a rent-seeking mentality. It is easier to be a contractor or pray for your brother to become governor, even if he's incompetent, so that you don't have to do any work again. But the basic thing we do, which is we need to sit down and tell ourselves that, look, we have a very huge population, per capita income is very low. The reality is that even at 1,000 naira at the lowest price cinemas, a lot of people cannot afford it. There is no effective spread of the cinemas. So what about the mobile phones? What about videogram? Whether it's VCD or DVD, I prefer to use the generic term. These are the issues we need to confront. And then the industry itself, what are we doing to protect our business? To ensure that we don't end up like those that were before us. Because this is stark reality. When we started Nollywood, I was 21, 20, now I'm 52. And if I were in the civil service, I'm sure I'll be preparing to retire. And there is no safety net. So a lot of the issues, and then the interesting thing, the advantage of coming late is that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's about looking at a glass of water. Is it half full or is it half empty? It's like the story of the salesman that was sent to India. He said, no, that they don't wear shoes here. There's no business here. And they sent her down. He said, they don't wear shoes, so please bring two container loads of shoes. All the time we look at our problems, we see only the problems. We don't sit down and find the solutions. Because the people that are pirating the film, they are human beings like me and you. It's the same problem we have in politics. If I go there, they will kill me. So who is good to die now? Right? So the problems are not as insurmountable as we think. That's why I'm very happy that peace is unprecedented. Let also there be changes. So we begin to address these issues, because the truth is that fundamentally there is demand for the films. So why is that supply is not meeting demand? Why at any point in time, why are we not corporatizing all these things? Why is it that we have a revenue share formula that is skewed in favor of the exhibitor and distributor? Because people keep saying cinema. Maybe I'm sure if Steve gives us the figures, it will not look so attractive again. They will say, the film made 300 million. How much does the producer get? And when? Is it when he has died of hunger? Are you getting my point? So because in the course of my research, I found out that if you ask any average Nollywood filmmaker, he will tell that, our parents that we don't have money to make films. It's not true. Since the 70s, government has always been giving money. They do more than generation, they gave them money. Most of them never paid back. We do respect them. It's in his book, page 45. They do more. Afolabi Adesanya's Oshisongo was funded by the venture stock from a merchant bank. Then if you look at the various types of film financing, which I'll be dealing with on the 4th, insurance, there is no type that does not exist in Nigeria. We have grants, Project Act, 3 billion, we chop them. BOI is there. As a matter of fact, I am not APC. There is no government that has made funding available as much as the present government, whether you like it or not. Go and sit down and check the social investment things. But Nigerians have lost faith, so people don't apply. Every single thing. When you talk about slate financing, it's portfolio management. When you talk about completion bond, it's performance bond that is already existing in other sectors. I've been working on it for many years. I wrote to you that time, Mr. Hope. These are things we need to put up, because if those things are there, you raise money. But the truth and the conclusion is that if you go to anybody, and I'm telling you because I've raised money for people and I see it all the time, the moment I can convince an investor that your Iran will make money and you give back, he will give you. And I tell you, you'll be amazed, because there has been a deliberate policy of government, which I'm sure Mr. Hope will confirm. Treasury bills now is less than 4%. But I know at the time, if you buy treasury bill with 10 million, you get almost 1 million immediately. Now it's less than 4%. Savings account, I know someone that put millions, they just get 25,000 every month. So government has had, I would like you to elaborate on it for their knowledge. Government has had a deliberate policy of trying to compel you to invest. There are people carrying money walking about. If you don't know how to raise money, come to me. There is money. Let's stop this. The problem is that we don't have the structure. And mind you that I will not go and take it to somebody that you collect his money and come back and tell me story. Because that's how I make my own living. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madu. Thank you. Pass it on to, just for understanding, after the lead speaker, after we get his own follow-up perspective, I'll come to the floor, take a few questions, then I'll come back to the discussant for their closing remarks, or closing statements. So, Mr. GUKAS, Madu mentioned something about which is my question to you, as someone who is there, who has the experience. That's outside. You may interrogate what each of us here have said, but the main area I want you to address from your wealth of experience is, let's look at the relationship between producers, distributors, and exhibitors. Because whether we like it or not, whether it's 10%, 20% now of films that make it to the cinema is a reality here in Nigeria now and Africa. Most people now, the language you hear is that, look, I'm making a cinema film. My film is for cinema and all of that. Let's look at the relationship between the producers, distributors, and exhibitors. How do we build trust between this tripod, as it were, with a view to making money, to every leg of the tripod making money, not one leg or two legs making money to the disadvantage of the third leg of the tripod? How do we create, build trust with a view to making money between producers, distributors, and exhibitors? Let's get it from your experience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to touch on a number of things. PC's position on the DVD, Pope's position on funding and the banking sector, and Madu's take on copyright. So I'll start with that before I get to answering your question about the relationship between the tripod that is the industry. I think that there is no such thing as a cinema film. I think when you say the word, I'm making a cinema film, it shows a lack of understanding of the journey of a film on your part. Because the cinema is only one of the many revenue streams that a film, can tap into. And so when you say you're making a cinema film, it's almost as if outside of the cinema, that film has no life. But that's not true, which is why I was saying, in my earlier submission, that you do need to understand the revenue windows and to understand the platforms that exist and to understand whether your film can travel on all of those platforms or some of those platforms, and to understand when to put it out on any of those platforms without jeopardizing the potential on other platforms as well. So when I look at the DVD scenario, I think that the goal for any film really is to maximize as much of the possibilities of return and income for the film as possible. And therefore, it would be detrimental to any producer to neglect any window. So therefore, to think that the DVD window is not important to a producer is a lack of foresight on the part of the producer. But I do know that producers have also struggled with how to tap into that. Unfortunately, in our industry, it turns out that you have to be so many things in one. You have to be the producer, you have to be part of the creation team, you have to be your own exhibitor, you have to be your own distributor, you have to be your own sales agent, you have to be your own everything. because even the people who position themselves as players in the different sectors do not quite understand how those sectors operate. So if you do not come to them with an understanding of what you want, you tend to get railroaded, and they don't perform or meet up the promises that they make. And there's a lot of sweet talk going on. We can deliver this, and you never get anything. But that's a story for another time. So I think that the idea of the DVD is to find how to engage it. And the only way it would seem to engage the DVD to make any reasonable return without having to invest heavily in the creation and distribution of the DVD itself is what producers need to be looking at. Is there a market for it? Is there a hunger for it? There is. There are people that cannot be reached with any other content other than the DVD. And so therefore for them, the DVD, the VCD culture is how they consume content in any way. And piracy, thrives where there's a lacuna. When the product cannot get to the people, the pirate will get it to the people. And that's how the pirate makes his money. I do understand that there's opportunistic piracy where even if you can get the product to the people, the pirate perhaps can get it to them cheaper. So again, balancing cost versus reach is also another thing that you need to look at where the DVD approach is concerned. But unfortunately, the sort of outlay you require to make that kind of push is something that is difficult to do. I know that we wanted to try something with 93 days, where, if you look at the fact that the average bank in Nigeria would have a customer base of what, 5, 10 million people? Good. So I think that finding a corporate approach to getting the DVD out in a way where the benefits accrue to both the corporates as an outlet for DVD, but also as an outlet for promotion of. So say you get a UBA, and you say to UBA, you spend X amount of money on advertising. If we took some of that advertising money and actually put the adverts in the DVDs that we are creating, MADU thief, I don't see you. And we put, and you put the adverts in the DVD and put a promotion behind the DVD that is backed by the bank. And you escrow the funding. So the bank is actively pushing the sale of the DVD to its customers and put a promo behind it to say, if you want to buy this film as a UBA customer, instead of 1,000, you get it at 500. And if you get it, you qualify to be part of a draw that can win you a car. You will pick up the DVD at a branch that is nearest to you. It is only when you pick the DVD up that deduction is made from your account. And even then, that is escrowed in the bank. And a sharing pro forma is worked out between the bank and the producer. And that way, you can almost produce to demand rather than produce hoping for demand. And I think that it is that kind of creative look and engagement at that exercise that perhaps can open up and throw the possibilities of, I think, a return or a rebound of the DVD to the earlier days when people were doing, 500,000, 1 million, copies of DVDs. But I think that it requires creative engagement. But to go at it as a purely commercial venture, what it would require for you to produce the quantities that are required to push it out in the way that you need to push it without the engagement of already existing players. And there's a question of sincerity on the part of the existing players as well. So it's a push and pull thing that requires creative engagement. But I would not subscribe to the fact that it is dead. I think that it just requires creative engagement. Then to speak to Hope's thing with the bankers, I've looked at how banking, the role it plays in film production in most industries. The banks don't give the money for the making of the film. The banks provide bridge financing. which is that you have instruments that assure the bank that that money is going to fall into place when that is done. And so the bank can see that actually all you need is this amount of money to make the film, or to meet this requirement of making the film, and it would trigger the release of other funds. In which case, the bank doesn't even need a collateral from you. It just needs these instruments that mitigate the risk that they are taking. It gives them the confidence and the assurance that that's going to happen. And the insurance is actually even more for you, the producer, than it is comfort for the bank. Because when those instruments exist, they already say to the bank, the funding is in place, it's going to fall into place. You know, and so to look at that, I think the intervention we need, again, needs to be creative and not to reinvent the wheel, to look at what's happening in other climes. And I think that a very simple way to get government to give the film industry money without actually putting their hands directly in their pockets is to actually just give tax rebates. To say that, so if we look at the profits that companies are making and the profits that individuals are making from their business, to say if you invest a portion of your profits in the activity of filmmaking or distribution, that portion is written off as tax, right? But what it then has is that I've actually taken something that government would have taken from me, given it to somebody to do something that is going to bring back money to me. So not only am I not paying that money to government, I stand the chance of making even more money from that exercise. That simple thing does not require then that government finds the money. It simply seeds some of the money that it could be making, right? To allow for the trigger of growth in an industry. And when that happens, you would find that it is very easy for me to approach MADU and say, MADU, you are a football player. I know that you earn, you know, XYZ on a monthly basis, and your tax is based off of that. But I can take 20% off of that off of you, and you don't have to pay tax on it, but I can also give it back to you and you make more money. And you only then pay taxes on what you make off of that investment rather than that part of the investment. And that in itself, I think, would allow conversations to happen with companies and individuals in a way that it increases or broadens the possible investors in the industry and allows for, you know, a lot more uptake in terms of content production and distribution. So that's one way to look at it. And to the issue of Slate Financing, yes, for any serious production company, for you to get to a point of comfort is when you get to a point where you are actually looking at Slate funding rather than funding individual films. Because then you can actually even produce to scale, you know, and then take advantage of, you know, of the economies of scale. And that then plays into that. And then to the issue of rights, but actually even to the issue of structure that my brother Eddie, who likes to hype me, says, is that where you do not have structure, you cannot even take advantage of interventions. Because when interventions come, they require certain degree of documentation to establish a track record based on which judgments can be made as to who is deserving and who has the integrity to make sure that what we're giving you the support to do, you will do. So even on that very selfish level of just benefiting from interventions, you need the structure, you need to organize. But outside of that, any other form of engagement with you would require that form of structure, because people must be able to do their due diligence on you. And they cannot do due diligence on you if you do not have any structure, because then, you know, you can just up and disappear at any point in time. So that becomes something that's to look at. But all of these things, everything we've spoken about, ride on one thing, on rights. Everything rides on rights. The moment you have a fantastic conversation with the bank, the investor, the everybody, the distributor, and everybody is happy because you have something that's going to make a lot of money, and say you're premising that on